Welcome to Magic Arcanum. I'm Ryan Gomez.
I'm Nicole Bolas-Burdick.
We're so glad you're here because it's coffee time. What? Oh yeah, that's right. This is Cards and Coffee, the unscripted, casual, chatty, talk 'em up talk show all about cards and coffee. I mean, kind of. Nicole and I have a great episode planned here for you today. And it is all brought to you by our sponsors, our friends really, at Many Worlds Tavern. They supplied the coffee that goes into these cups. And Nicole also picked up a shirt from them as well. Why? Because they are good people and they make great coffee. It is coffee for game nights. It is coffee you can get online using our link down in the description of this video. If you're one of the first 100 people to do that, you'll save 10% on your entire order, which can include any of their varieties of coffee, available in whole beans or grounds. They have cool stickers, they got t-shirts, they got a whole bunch of stuff. And the best part is, every time you make a purchase there, they donate a portion of that purchase to a gaming-related charity. So you're helping the community, you're supporting a small business, you are supporting Magic Arcanum and helping us make these videos. It's a really good thing. In a world full of things that maybe are not so good, this is one of those good things. And even if you don't drink coffee yourself, somebody in your life probably does, or you can bring some to game night, right? Someone else will bring the chips and the soda. You can be the person showing up with this amazing coffee. It has cool gaming-related flavor to it, and I mean that literally and thematically. When you buy their coffee, they come with these little trading cards that have the stats for the coffee and great illustrations. It's such a cool experience. I look forward to getting it. It only comes in the mail. You got to go online and order it. You won't find it in stores, but go to Many Worlds Tavern, use our link, place an order, tell them we sent you, say hi. They are some cool people over there. We love chatting with them, and we're super excited to have them sponsor our show, Cards and Coffee. I'm going to take a sip. Nicole, keep us going here.
Last time I had was at Homely House was something like that was my last brew, but I have switched over to the Dragon's Nest, and this is a lighter roast than the last one. I'm typically a medium roast fan, but I like that one so much that I decided to try this one. And I'm also a big fan of the decaf and all of the roasts so far that I've tried. Yep. I have seen some new ones coming out. I've seen the instant coffee packets that you can have if you're, going on adventures and you can't grind your beans and brew your coffee where you're going. They have these little instant coffee packs that brings the same wonderful homebrewed goodness wherever you're going. All you need is hot water. You just brew it up there on the go, and Many Worlds Taverns truly goes to many worlds.
Man, that's perfect. You got your pocket full of dice on one side. You got your instant coffee in the other pocket. You're ready for adventure. Wherever the game breaks out, you want to be that person, right?
At all times.
At all times. We love playing games. We play Magic the Gathering every day, but there are other games that we also play, sometimes while drinking our Many Worlds Tavern coffee. Nicole, what games are you playing?
So from the last time we met, I am still in the deep depths of Factorio, but you got to take a break from it every once in a while. You can't just build factories back to back. It runs you a little insane after a while. So I've been mixing it up with some more casual games, things that I can play with my husband. Rounds has been really, really fun. You're this little round character and you go until you die, and then there's the next round. Very casual. You live, you die, and I would recommend it to anyone looking for something quick and fun and casual, so long as no one gets too terribly competitive in the end. Similar to, things like Overcooked 2. I mean, I would even compare it to Among Us, that type of casual, but it's very fun. It had me laughing for, I shouldn't say how long, but it's very fun to play.
That's great. I think you and I have similar taste in games in a lot of ways. And so today I'm going to talk about a little favorite of mine called Rumble in the Dungeon. And this is a really simple little tabletop game. Basically, you build a little mini dungeon out of these double-sided tiles. So they have cool art on either side, but each tile's pretty much the same. There's one that is a treasure room and one that is an exit, and you get to build whatever kind of mini dungeon you want. And then into each room, you drop a little figure character, and they're like the classic D&D. There's clerics, there's wizards, there's barbarians, goblins, all that stuff. But it has this really charming kind of cartoony, kid-friendly art to it, which makes it family appropriate. And then you get dealt 2 secret characters out of these 12 in these 12 rooms. So everyone is secretly in charge of 2 different people. And your goal is to get one of your people out of the dungeon with the treasure, which was all kind of pre-assembled and randomly kind of spaced out. So you might start right on top of it. You might start somewhere else in the dungeon. But here's the best part. On your turn, you can move anybody you want. It doesn't have to be one of your people. So there's this whole mind game in like taking the goblin, but you're really secretly the zombie, but you're going to make the goblin move with the treasure so that on your turn, you step in there with the barbarian and you squish the goblin thinking you're stopping me, but secretly I wanted you to do that. And there's so many cool layers to a game that is basically just 24 pieces of cardboard, 12 of them laying flat and 12 of them standing up, but it becomes this incredible game that fits in a nice little box. It's portable, it's casual, it's a great one to break out. Again, I'm real big on the family games. My kid can do it, grandma can do it, anybody can do this one, and you can put as much head gaming into it as you want, or you could just be like, hey, I like this gelatinous cube. I'm just going to move him through the dungeon and just be chaotic neutral and just kind of, do that. So that's Rumble in the Dungeon. I believe there's also another like version of it, Rumble in the House, which is the same idea where it's like roommates all fighting over like, cleaning the house, and they can connect. You can have the dungeon flow into the house and have 24 people fight. Anyway, check out Rumble in the Dungeon. That's my pick for the week. We're going to move on from the games that we play to another game that we love to play, Magic the Gathering, which a lot of people assume is like a game. The truth is, Magic is actually many, many games with a shared system of rules, and even that is sometimes flexible. But I think that's part of why this game has lasted for 20, almost 30 years now. It can be something different for each type of player. And so today we're just going to kind of talk about some of our favorite ways to play Magic, maybe some you have heard of, maybe some you've never heard of before. We hope that this kind of inspires you to think of new ways to use your cards, or, go back through your collection, or next time you sit down with your friends, say, hey, I heard about this thing that I want to try out. Can we put some decks together and see how that goes? So that's what we're going to do today here on Cards and Coffee.
Is it coffee time?
Long awkward pause as I draw from my cup. Got to tuck the mustache over the lip here. All right, so in Magic the Gathering, we can really separate all the formats into 2 giant buckets. The first one we call constructed formats. And here you construct your deck, usually ahead of time, however you want within the rules of the format, and we'll talk more about that in a second. The other big bucket is limited, where you have a limited selection of cards, and usually you have to make your deck on the spot using that smaller pool of cards. We're going to kind of dive into each of these 2 branches, but most formats can fit under one of those 2 umbrellas, if you will. So what kind of, squeaky chair, what kind of formats are constructed? Well, the most popular one, well, I'm not going to say most popular.
No, not anymore.
No, probably not. One that you will see played a lot, I guess I can phrase it that way, and the one that is the main format on Magic Arena, which I know is on a lot of tablets, phones, computers right now, that would be Standard. So in Standard Constructed, you build your deck using cards from the last 2-ish years of set releases, and it's a little fuzzy. I'm not going to get into exactly what makes Standard, but the idea is that it's the most recent cards, so they are widely available. A person who's been playing longer than you and has a bigger collection isn't at as much of an advantage because their older cards don't help them so much in this format. And it's supposed to be kind of the most new player friendly, accessible, get in, here's the new cards, walk into a store. It could be your game store, it could be Target, it could be whatever, because they all have standard stuff. I want to play, I need a standard deck. You can get, sometimes they have pre-made ones, or you can make one using booster packs from Innistrad Midnight Hunt right now. And then you're good for like about 2 years. And It's a rotating format, so every 2 years stuff gets pushed out, new cards come in, you have to keep updating your deck, which some people do or do not like. But that's the idea, is that it's an accessible kind of way to get into Magic, and it is the most perhaps straightforward and easiest of them all to understand. That's what I would say. Do you agree with me on that, Nicole?
I found when I started Magic, I started with Commander, which we will get to a little farther down this list. And I found going from Commander to Standard was a little difficult because with Commander, you have a much larger card pool. And then Standard, you're super limited in a non-limited way to what you're using. So if you're not up and up on what is coming out, if you haven't looked at the entire Innistrad Midnight Hunt set, you may be missing something. But on the other hand, that means you get to spend time looking at these new cards and investigating where Magic is going and kind of keeping up with that rotation. And everything is fresh and new. And I've come to enjoy Standard way more than I did when I started.
Very good, very good. Okay, so taking one step further or one step back or however we're going to, I don't know, map this out. The next tier of Constructed, I would say, would be Modern and or Pioneer. We'll start with mod and or Historic. They all kind of fit into this category.
Nowadays,
these are non-rotating formats, so cards don't ever leave this format. They just get added in. So the pool of cards gets bigger every year. And they go back, usually they're set by a certain date or a set that was released at a certain time. So Modern was really popular. I think it still is, but it is gradually being replaced by Pioneer. And on Arena, you can't play either of those because the card pool isn't programmed into the game yet. So instead they have Historic, which is the same idea, which is made up of all the cards that have been released on Arena. But so for Modern, I think we're at the 10-year anniversary. It goes all the way back to Mirrodin. So there are some really broken cards in here. You can do some very powerful stuff, but it is still kind of straddling the line between being a format where a new-ish player could still get into that. It doesn't go as far back as, say, Legacy or Vintage, which lets you use all the cards ever made. Now you're going back 30 years almost. So that can be really hard to get into. But Modern they picked a point and said, okay, anything forward from here is fair game. Anything on the other side of that, we're not going to do that. You still get to make some really crazy fun decks in there, and there's lots of options to build around. Pioneer is a same idea, just with a much shorter window. We only go back to Return to Ravnica, I think was the start for that one. Anything Return to Ravnica forward with a smaller list of banned cards. Things like fetch lands are not in there. But the idea is kind of the same. We know you have these cards. They're sitting in your shoebox or in your collection. We want you to keep playing with them. So we're going to have tournaments and things built around this range of cards for Modern, Pioneer, Historic. That's the idea behind those. Do you play any of those non-rotating, I'll kind of say mid-ranged-ish formats?
I've become a huge fan of Historic. I originally was not a fan of the topic because I had just gotten used to Standard. I'm like, okay, I have this card pool. And so I went from Commander with a huge card pool down to Standard, which was tiny, and then expanding it back up into Historic. And being that that's every card on Arena, it makes it a lot easier to build something. You know that what you're doing is within the rules of that format, and you won't have to worry about anything outside of it. So not a big fan of Modern and Pioneer just because I wasn't around for a lot of the Modern sets, and Pioneer is so new that I haven't had a chance to play much, if any of it. But Historic has become a love of mine. I definitely love playing Historic on Arena. I'll just go for hours sometimes.
It is a good way to get some value out of your Arena account because you can't trade cards. So once they're in your collection, they're yours forever. And it kind of felt bad when rotation happened and you're like, well, now what do I do with all these cards that I spent wild cards on or gems or gold or however you got them? But now they're like, okay, you can keep playing with those and still enter events and win prizes. So that actually feels pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. The next constructed format on my list of whatever I thought of this morning, Pauper, which is one of my all-time favorites, perhaps one of the most misunderstood formats, but I think it's really, really cool. And I would encourage everyone to have a Pauper deck on them at all times because it's the best. It's probably the best way to play Magic. Pauper is pretty much any card ever made, as long as it has been printed, key part, printed as a common. Okay, so you think, well, how exciting is that? Commons are boring and stupid. You can't make a good deck with just commons. Not true, friend, not true. Some of the best Magic cards of all time are available as commons. Lightning Bolt is a common. Counterspell, common. Brainstorm, Ponder. You can make some crazy, crazy spell slinging decks with that. There are also some really great creatures at common as well.
Oh, yeah.
But you can do so much in this format, and the decks cost you like $12. And like they don't rotate, and you can like bling them out. You can get, foil Gurmag Anglers and Delver of Secrets. Like these are good cards that like crush and win games, and they're easy to get your hands on. Some are getting a little harder, but the format is super easy to get into. Power level is off the charts. It's basically like vintage or legacy, because you can play with some really old cards that don't get to see play in a lot of other places. So Pauper is love it.
I do love it as well. It's like you said, it feels a lot like vintage, where you tell yourself, this is fun because none of it matters. These are all commons. Like they're common cards, and just the insanity you can do with a burn deck in Pauper would
Pauper Elves is great. Burn is great. The white like Battle Screech Bird Army is there are so many cool strategies that you can pull off there that you can't do anywhere else. Mono black control, Chittering Rats, and the Witches, and like all that stuff, man. Super cool cards. Love it, love it, love it. When we worked together at TCG Player, we had our own in-house tournament where we would play, and you get to meet other people from other departments. It was a great icebreaker within the company. We've kind of kept that tradition alive for Magic Arcane, and we've done some Pauper tournaments with our Discord, with our patrons, and we've sent them some cool prizes, and we kind of love to see what crazy decks people come up with for Pauper. Granted, we're doing historic Pauper, so the card pool not quite as deep, but there is still some really cool stuff on there, especially thanks to JUMPSTART getting added, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But Pauper is super duper cool. Right on the coattails of that, I will add Artisan. We just did a Artisan video with humans versus werewolves. Similar idea. You're using only commons and uncommons, so no rares and no mythics. Why does that matter? Well, rares and mythics is where you start to get the really swingy, bomby cards. You also get planeswalkers in there, which a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of people, but some people don't appreciate what planeswalkers added to Magic as a whole when they were first were introduced. They have not existed the whole time Magic has been around. Some people don't even know that. The game was around for 10 or 12 years before they even added planeswalkers to the game. And if you were playing before that, there's definitely a point in time where, we got our branching timelines. But anyway, Pauper is amazing. Artisan, pretty good too. You kind of have to do that on Arena just to get enough cards into the pool to be able to make decks, but that's that. The next constructed format we're going to talk about also kind of gets misnamed quite a bit. You will hear it called Commander. Really, traditionally, it's called EDH, Elder Dragon Highlander. It was designed around the ideas of the original Elder Dragons. And in this format, your deck is singleton. So aside from your basic lands, you can only have one of everything. So thus the Highlander, there can only be one. When Wizards of the Coast got aware of this format and started creating their own products, they couldn't call it EDH because Highlander is like a name that belongs to somebody else. So they started calling it Commander. And one of our commenters on a video pointed out in a way I really liked, EDH is the format, Commander is the product. So Wizards makes Commander cards and Commander sets. You're really playing EDH, though. You can say you're playing Commander, but somebody at the table will always be like, actually, as they push up their glasses. So don't fall for that trap. It's EDH, but Commander. Talk to me about EDH Commander, Nicole.
And that it's a singleton format. You can only have one card of each card name in your deck. I found that this was a great way to learn about Magic because in a standard Commander deck, you have 99 cards plus your Commander. We're all similar with
Yeah.
60 cards, but
Yep.
that's 99 magic cards that are unique that you will see maybe if you get to see the whole deck. But regardless, game after game, you're
Yep.
seeing a different combination of those. So for me, it's the most exciting if you haven't seen everything.
So I think Wizards has agreed with you because they have started rolling out Commander decks with pretty much every major set released now. It's kind of their on-ramp to get people, instead of buying those old Planeswalker decks that were not great, now you buy a Commander deck, and that's how you get into Adventures in the Forgotten Realms had them.
Yep.
Innistrad here has them. So they're neat. The format on a whole, though, much more. So I have to be careful because I'll say it's much more casual, but then there are CEDH players, competitive EDH players, who do make decks that include underground seas and they push them way to the limit, which is fine, like cool. But I think the genesis for it is multiplayer, usually pods of 4 people, and it's supposed to be more like, look at this cool thing my deck can do, rather than I'm gonna infinite combo kill you all on the back of my soul ring into mana crypt into whatever. Those are fun too. I'm not gonna say that you can't play Magic your way, but the way we played it, you had that awesome Ishkana spider deck just because you liked spiders and you liked creeping me out with them. And I hate playing against the spiders. And we would sit down for lunch and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to throw every dragon I can at here. And you're like, all my spiders have reach. And I'm like, so like that is like Commander EDH for me. It's just the wacky playoffs and all these cool legendary creatures. I'm a big sucker for the legendary permanents. The stories behind them are a major part of our whole premise here on Magic Arcanum. So getting to play with those and picking one to lead your new deck, that's a really cool thing. So if you have not played EDH or Commander, check that one out. It is a great way to get friends into it. As you said, kind of cool to see different cards every time. It can be a little overwhelming, I know, understanding the rules of all these different cards, but sometimes you gotta sink or swim, and throwing them in the deep end is one way to do that. So you can do that. We also mentioned Brawl, which is kind of a junior version of that. And then also there was a format called Oathbreaker going around for a while. Not sure if that one really gets any attention anymore, but the idea there was, instead of a legendary creature, you would pick a planeswalker and partner them up kind of with a signature spell, an instant or sorcery that they could repeatedly recast. So neat little variations on the idea of having your leader type character, creature, planeswalker, whatever, and then their supporting cast of other cards. Same idea. All right. Also, I'm just flipping through my notepad here, just burning through these. Other cool constructed formats. I've heard it called Type 93, 94, or Old School, where you play with only cards that existed in like 1993, 94, which, if you don't know, that's when Magic first came out. So you're playing with like the really old stuff. And it's charming. It's not super accessible for everybody, but if you have the means to play in this golden age of Magic, it's a fun trip. It's not for everybody. We also played Toy Boats and Tiny Leaders were 2 other formats that I experimented with, back in the day. I don't want to spend too much time talking about them because they're just a little... they're dead formats at this point. I'll just say it. Like, I haven't seen anyone play those in years, but the idea remains that you can construct a deck of Magic cards tons of different ways. It could be 60 cards, it could be 100, it could be singleton, it could be 4 of whatever you want. It could be capped by rarity at Pauper or Artisan. It could be capped by ages, going back to certain sets or certain points in time, all the way back to Old School. However you want to slice that pie and say, this is the area we're playing in here, go build a deck, meet me at the kitchen table in 30 minutes, and we're going to battle it out. Those are all constructed formats, probably the most, most widely played ways of playing Magic. That's what everyone thinks of first. I have a deck, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to play with it. Makes sense. But there's a whole other way to play Magic, which is really, really cool, and that is the limited way to play Magic. So what does limited mean? Well, like I kind of said earlier, you're limited by the pool of cards that is literally, in most cases, dropped right in front of you. So an example of that would be something like Draft. So in a draft, if you've never done a draft, let me blow your mind here. You sit down at a table with 7 other people, and the numbers can change. I mean, this is not ironclad. It's whatever works for you.
Average draft.
Average idea, textbook draft, table of 8. You have 3 booster packs in front of you. They can be from any point in time, but usually you draft a singular set. So we'll say you have 3 packs of Midnight Hunt.
Chaos draft would be random.
Chaos draft is a thing. Yeah. You open your first booster pack, look through the entire thing, and pick one of those cards to keep. You put it down in front of you. You hand the remaining 14 cards out of that pack to your neighbor, and the person sitting over here hands you their 14 cards. You pick one of those to keep, put it down, lather, rinse, repeat until you go through your whole pack, open your next pack, pass it the other direction, just kind of mix things up a bit. And you do that until you've gone through all 3 of your packs. You will have a pool then of 45 cards from which you have to make a 40-card deck. You get to add as many basic lands as you want to that. So usually you're looking for like 23-ish playable cards out of the 45 you've drafted. About half of whatever you pick up is going to end up in your deck, along with 16, 17, 18 lands, depending. And then you play in usually like a tournament. You'll do either like a Swiss match or whatever. You just kind of play through against other people who had drafted in that pod. We call it a pod. That is really, really, really cool. It is a great way to use your new booster packs rather than just ripping them open and seeing what you got. Play a game with them first as a draft. Yeah. You still keep the cards afterwards. You can then put them in your constructed decks. You'll still have them. But you have turned that experience of just shredding packs into an event, an all day long event in some cases. Cheers. Okay.
Which you will drink coffee to complete, I'm sure.
You want to have some Many Worlds Tavern there to get you through that whole day. Another really popular limited format is sealed, which is a similar idea. You will see this one show up most often at the pre-release for a new set. You will usually go in and they will give you a pre-release kit, which has most of the time 6 booster packs of that newest set that you are there to experience. Often they will add in an extra card, like a promo card, sometimes with a date stamp, or they might be switching to like a store name stamp or something. That might change. But traditionally, you get a promo card and 6 booster packs. You open all 6 of those packs, but you're not passing them to your neighbor this time. You have to make your 40-card deck using whatever you like best out of those 6 packs worth of stuff. So it's a little more luck dependent, in my opinion. It's a little harder to kind of find, okay, what strategies are my neighbors doing? What cards are they passing? What does that tell me? What can I read from that? That's a little bit more heady. This is just open it and cool, I got a Planeswalker, or cool, I got 2 of these green elementals that are really, really big. So I'm going to try to ramp up to those and carry my way to victory on the backs of those guys. It's a little more swingy in that way, but it is fun, especially for the pre-release, because everyone's starting at the same level and nobody's collection or nobody really has an advantage over anybody. That makes it a nice way to get your foot in the door on a new set. Do you go to pre-releases? Do you play any sealed kind of events?
I have purchased some pre-release packs to do pre-release at home, and it's been a blast. I would say by far sealed is one of my favorite formats. It puts you all on the same playing field. You get 6 packs, you get 6 packs. Yeah. Make of it what you will. And I find that it simplifies the draft process. You don't have to worry about what everyone else is doing.
That's a good point.
That being said, to me, that makes it more casual. You'll probably lose a bunch, especially if somebody got like crazy cards in all their packs. But
sure.
Go by, you get 6 more packs. You can do it again. You can repeat this process over and over and over again.
You also get the cool moments if you're at a pre-release. Everyone sits down. The judge is like, "You may begin," and everyone's like frantically ripping open their things. And somebody's like, "I got the dragon. I got Elspeth," or whatever. And like they're holding them up and like foil stamped. And you don't have that during a draft because everyone's like trying to keep secret what's in the pack. But here, it's a much more outgoing, lively sort of a thing, and that has its own charm to it as well. Another limited format that we like to play is Cube, and I think you've done this one more than me, although we are working on our own Magic Arcanum Story Cube. In fact, we talked about it in an earlier episode of Cards and Coffee, so go check that one out if you haven't already. Talk to me about a cube, Nicole. What's the difference between a cube and drafting? Or is there a difference?
you can draft a cube or you can do sealed from a cube. A cube is basically a large pool of cards, somewhere between 360 all the way up to, I've seen 900 card cubes that are just, I'm not sure how they get that many in there. And it can be based on anything. One of my favorites is Vintage Cube because, as I said earlier, the cards don't matter. They're all broken, so you may as well have fun with it.
Sure.
So everyone's going to be playing crazy cards, so you may as well play the crazy cards too. But the other side of cube that I enjoy is like our cube, where you're doing a thematic cube, or we love storytelling. So all of the cards that are going in, might have something to do with that, and they might tell a story in and of themselves, and you can see a large pool. Now, if you draft that, it works the same as any other draft. It's just your card pool is different, and sealed, same way. You could open completely unrelated cards from completely different sets in a cube, and they will all pretty much just follow the one premise of whatever that cube is, which can be vague, but it can also be very, very niche, like a pauper cube, where every card is a common, or a pauper legal card, rather.
Yeah. So cubes are neat because you get to play designer and kind of make your own set, which is then drafted exactly as Midnight Hunt would be, but you get a step before that. You get to do some extra creative stuff there, and there's lots of neat cubes in the community. Sometimes they get put on Magic Online, or you'll see lists going around. The Pauper Cube, excellent mention there. Our friend Adam Staborski is kind of, I think he still runs that, or he has a committee working with him now who kind of oversee that. And so it's our love of Pauper mixed with our love of cubes, and now you get to basically draft a Pauper deck every time, which is, perfect. It's peanut butter and jelly. All right, so those are our two big buckets of formats. There are some other kind of outsider ways to play Magic I wanted to include. I'm not entirely confident which way you would classify some of these. I'm going to leave it up to our audience, so feel free to let us know in the comments what you think of the following formats, if you've played them before or not. If you just are hearing it and you're like, well, that's clearly constructed, Ryan. Duh. Maybe not. The first one is called Pack Wars, or I've also heard it called Mini Masters. And the idea is each player gets one booster pack and 15 basic lands, 3 of each of the 5 colors. You don't look at the booster pack. You just open it, shuffle it with the lands, and you have a 30-card deck that you have no idea what's in it. It's going to have cards of all 5 colors, and now you have the lands to do it. And then you play against your opponent. Is that constructed? I guess not really. Is it limited? I mean, I guess it's closer to limited, but you didn't make any active choice. You didn't draft it. You didn't build the deck. You were just kind of given a deck that was in a way pre-made, which kind of makes it constructed. So it can go in either in the Venn diagram circle. This is like the right in the sliver in the middle. It's a little of both. So that's a good one if you just have a few stray packs laying around. If you're just trying to get in a quick game, or you just want to, whatever, mix it up a bit. It's kind of cool. In a way, it is the spiritual predecessor to JUMPSTART, which takes that idea to 11. JUMPSTART, the packs are each individually themed, and they already come with the lands in them. And in that one, you actually open 2 packs, mash those together, and then you have a deck that mixes, I don't know, doctors and wizards, or zombies and thieves, or unicorns and multicolored slivers, or whatever. All these different ways of jumbling up different concepts into a deck. And for that one, depending. So there are some, if you play an arena, it will present you with 3 options. You pick one of those 3 and then another 3. So you know what the theme is, but you don't know the exact cards in that theme. But those are two kind of ways of just starting with a whole booster pack, some lands, and you just play it out. Another kind of variation on that, which I liked, but I haven't gotten to play a whole lot. It's hard to find someone who will do this one with me. It was called Pack Pai Gow, and it's sort of based on Pai Gow that you can play in a casino, which, as I understand it, is like a version of like Chinese dominoes or something. Forgive me for being totally wrong about that. I'm ignorant in the ways of casino gaming outside of the classics, poker, roulette, blackjack, that sort of thing.
Understandable.
Have you heard of Pack Pai Gow, Nicole?
I have never heard of this one. This was one of the ones that ended up on the list that I was excited to hear about myself, because I know the term pack. Magic cards come in a pack, but that's about it.
Okay, so you and I each get a pack of Midnight Hunt, whatever. We each open it. We get to look through all 15 cards, and we are going to separate those into 5 piles of 3 face down in front of ourselves. All right. You're picking which cards go into those piles. Then you and I play 5 mini games of Magic using just those piles. So I'll pick up my first pile and I have 3 cards. We start with 5 life and infinite mana. So on your turn, you could play all 3 of your cards. You could just play 1 and I could wait and see if you play something. And then maybe I, kill it with a defenestrate or whatever. I can keep stuff back. And so you just play these little clashes with your 3 card piles until somebody wins, and then you move on to the next. And so out of those 5, whoever wins 3 out of the 5, there can be draws, because if you both have like no creatures or no way to kill each other or whatever, then it just goes on to the next one. And so it's whoever wins the most out of the 5 or the first to win 3 out of the 5. And so there's like this neat little mini deck building where you're like, okay, I have 15 cards. I don't want to put all my bombs into one because that's only worth 1 point. I got to spread it out. Do I save my removal and best cards for the later rounds? Do I try to, establish an early lead? How, and you have to like find all these neat little synergies in there. And it's just a really interesting twist on playing right out of the pack. You don't need basic lands or anything. If you just have 2 packs, you can do Pack Pai Gow. Pretty neat. But again, it's hard to find someone to like, hey, you want to crack some packs and do Pai Gow? And they're like, what are you talking about? Ryan? You've been out in the sun too long, man. What are you talking about? So that's another one. Another format that is close to a cube is a battle box. And I actually did a battle box list when I was working at TCG Player. I get to bring them up twice in one video. What is a battle box? So it's kind of like a cube. You design a list of cards, usually themed around something. Mine was called Plane of Thrones. So it was based on a popular TV and book series you might have heard of. And in there was dragons, there was knights, there were wildlings, which were like elves. But there wasn't Doomblade or Counterspell because those don't happen in that series. But there was a wall of ice and there were zombies and stuff like that. So you build this whole list of cards. But then instead of drafting from it, you put that deck kind of in front of like the players, and each player gets 10 lands kind of set aside. Now, for mine, I used 5 basics, 1 of each, and then 5 tapped lands from the original Ice Age or Cold Snap, or whichever one had like the dual lands in it, right? And so you start the game with 4 cards drawn off the top of that deck. There's no lands in there, so you're just getting a mix of whatever. You get 4, and then you can play on your turn any one of your 10 lands. So maybe you start with your basic planes because you drew a 1-drop bird or whatever that you really want to get out there. But at some point, you're going to have to start using those tap lands, and that's going to slow you down. So another player might decide to start with those and save their untapped lands for later. You got to kind of figure out your mana. There's no land destruction in there. There's very little card draw within the box itself. Usually it was what we call cantrips that would replace themselves. So you're not going to find like divination to draw 2 cards because every card you draw is gas. There's no lands or dead cards in there really. But a battle box is neat because, again, you get to theme it however you want. And then it takes some of the burden off of the mana screw, mana flood that you kind of see in other formats. You'll always have access to your 10 lands. The strategy becomes, what order do I play them in? How do I get the best value out of what I'm drawing out of this 5-color pile? Because it's got everything in it. What cards do I prioritize keeping alive versus what I hope to draw later? And so there's all sorts of cool little synergies in there. And it's just another fun way of playing Magic. And if you're interested in that one, you should check it out. Maybe I'll put the link into the Plane of Thrones thing. Not that I need to send views over to TCG Player anymore, but anyway. I just got a few more on the list here, so I'm just going to keep going. You're smiling. We're having fun. We're having cards and coffee. This is a good episode.
I'm almost to the bottom of my cup of coffee.
Me too.
So
and we're almost at the bottom of
the list.
We are. Where are we at? Star. So this is Star format or pentagram or pentagon. I've heard some version of 5 because it's the 5 colors of Magic. You need 5 people to play this. Each of you needs to bring a deck, so I guess it is a constructed format, of a mono color. So someone is the white, someone's blue, green. You sit in that order, in Wooburg order, exactly as it is on the back of a Magic card, and you play. But the difference is you win when the 2 colors opposite of you are both out of the game. So you have allies on either side of you because they want to kill at least one of the other things you're trying to kill. But your enemies are also like allied against you, and there's all these weird like political implications, and so you have to like make friends. Like, oh, help me knock out red so that we both get closer to winning. And they're like, but if red goes, you actually, so you have all this interplay between the colors, and so this was how I used to play back when I first learned back in like high school, middle school age. I had a pool of friends. We didn't have a huge collection, so we kind of decided, all right, Gomez, you take all the white cards that we own, make a white deck. Ben will do the blue, Alex will do green, and everyone kind of had their own color. And this was also where I learned, because back then the rules for I didn't have the internet. It was just kind of, you picked it up as you went. You learned from friends. Sometimes there was a really thick little rule book that you could flip through, but nobody had time for that in middle school. I didn't care. I didn't really know. Nobody bothered to explain to me you could only have 4 of a card in your deck aside from the basic lands. I didn't know that.
Oh, no.
So I owned a card, I think it was Welkin Hawk or something like that, where it's like a 1/1 flyer for like 2 mana, and it's white. And when it dies, you get to look through your deck for another one and put it in your hand. And I was like, I'm just going to make a deck of like 40 of these guys. I'll never run out of cards. And after like my 5th or 6th one, my friend sitting to the left of me was like, Gomez, you can't have that many of those birds in your deck, right? And I was like, what? Super embarrassing, sitting down playing Star as the white deck that was mostly a terrible 1/1 flyer that was just going to keep like propagating itself forever. And they're like, I don't think you're going to win this. As they're playing Shivan Dragon and Crash of Rhinos and whatever else was cards of the day. So anyway, that's my spiel about Star. Wizards has kind of kept that alive lately. We were talking about this in the pre-show warm-up with the Game Night in a Box, where you can now buy a box that has 5 monocolored decks in it, and the idea is kind of the same. You sit down and play with a single color deck in this 5-player format. I don't know if you still win by KOing the 2 opposite of you, but the idea is still there, and so that is I guess it's constructed. I'm saying I don't really know if it's limited or constructed. You are limited to your color and some other things, but Star is a neat one. If you got 4 other friends and you want to each make a monocolored deck, you could even take that as far as Commander. You could do EDH Star. You could have a monocolored EDH Commander deck and do that. That'd be a cool thing to do. Archenemy, I think, is going to be the last one on my list here. So for a while, Wizards of the Coast experimented with releasing these multiplayer game-in-a-box things until they got into the rhythm of, hey, Commander sells the best. We're just going to keep doing Commander. But for a while, you could do Plane Chase. You could do a couple others. Archenemy was one that I liked the best. There was one in particular where it was Nicole Bolas versus 3 other Planeswalkers. And so it was like a 3-on-1 multiplayer format. The decks came pre-made, so again, kind of constructed. But you were also limited to the cards that were in the box. So in a way, it was kind of both. To make it more fair, Bolas player also had a deck of special scheme cards.
Oh.
Deck of special scheme cards. Okay, got it. That would let him or her do some crazy OP stuff, because otherwise they're getting hit with 3 attacks a turn and they can only do 1 back. So Bolas wins if they can kill the 3 Planeswalker character. I think there was a Chandra deck, a Gideon deck, and a Nissa deck were the 3 in that box set. And so that's like a really cool flavor-driven thematical thing where it's the Gatewatch versus Nicole Bolas, and you get to play with some cool old cards that they reprinted and put into those decks to make them feel like you really are Chandra and stuff like that. So that is probably the last on my list of different ways to play Magic. You can get it in a box that you just open and play, and that's a really cool thing to bring to game night or to your friend's house if they don't own any of their own cards. Cool, pick up one of those. If you got enough people to do a draft, or Battle Box, you can just do 2 people. You don't have to do any drafting. You just sit down and play, or you can have a big group of people, so that's really flexible. Cube is another way to put your own cool spin on things, and so on. Back up the list, up to the constructed formats, where Standard, pretty easy to get into, Modern and stuff beyond that, a little bit harder, a little bit more expensive, and you can go all the way to old school, type 93, 94, whatever. Tons of different ways to play Magic. Yes. They're all valid. They're all correct. There's no wrong way to enjoy this game, and that is why it has been around so long, and it continues to be so popular. If you had to pick one out of that whole list that we just spent, I don't know, 3 days talking about, which is your all-time favorite? I think I already know, but
it might be biased because it's new and exciting, but Jumpstart gets me going every time. Like the fact that the packs are themed. I'm a huge theme person. Tribal is my shtick. And so being able to squish two themes together that you may not have thought to squish together ever before, and somehow it works. They've designed these packs to pretty much work no matter which ones you squish together. And I found that they all go together really, really well. And it's been the most exciting format I've played lately, for sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, my favorite, I think I said earlier, it's Pauper. I mean, it is pure magic. There's no planeswalkers getting in the way, no broken rare bombs or whatever. You got to be really smart about your deck construction. You got to find value in weird places. You got to come at it with a very different mindset. And the fact that it's really affordable and easy to get into also super helps. So that is my all-time favorite. And you could do Pauper EDH. You can do Pauper Start. You know, every other version of Magic can be done at Commons, which is pretty awesome as well. So it's very, very flexible, affordable. To me, that's pure Magic, man. If I was going to sit down with someone and be like, here's a common Goblins deck versus my common Elves, let's just slug it out and see which tribe, wins here. Like that is cool.
I think Pauper, besides EDH, is the only format I have multiple decks in. Just always. I have Elves just always. I have Burn just always. Red deck wins, which are slightly different than Burn, but you just have those around because, like you said, you just grab two Pauper decks and say, "Here you go, let's play," because they're a lot easier to manage usually.
Yeah. So those are our favorites, but we want to hear from you guys down in the comments. Please let us know. Did we miss one? Did we miss your favorite format? Looking at you, Kamigawa Block Tiny Leaders. Pauper, whatever. There's like a whole thing.
It goes. There's so many.
There's so many ways to play Magic. Let us know down in the comments which one is your favorite. And make sure you check out Many Worlds Tavern. Get yourself some coffee. The next time you sit down and play Magic or Rumble in the Dungeon or whatever game you're into, you want to have some good treats behind that. So get yourself some coffee. Save 10% on your order if you're one of the first 100 people to use our link. We really appreciate it. And we want to see our partnership with these guys continue because they're a lot of fun. That's going to be it for this episode of Cards and Coffee. Thanks for watching. We hope you like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the great stories you'll find
only here on Magic Arcanum.
We'll see you.